Recently, I was in Brisbane, Australia, where Talking HealthTech collaborated with the Australasian Institute of Digital Health to spin up the Digital Health Studio right on the expo floor at HIC 2024, where health, innovation and community converge. During the event, I had the best time speaking with dozens of speakers and attendees to try to better understand who does what in this ever-evolving landscape and what the biggest issues are on the front line, and the role of technology in transforming the industry. In this special feature episode of the Talking HealthTech podcast, you'll hear 4 of those discussions that I had at the Digital Health Studio at HIC, and you can catch the rest of the discussions from the event over on our YouTube channel. Collaboration starts with a conversation, Team HealthTech. Let's make it happen.
My name is John Nosta. I'm an innovation theorist. My background is actually in cardiovascular pathophysiology. I spent some time in medical school, so I know the big words. But I left that and ended up in advertising and marketing. So I jokingly tell people that I'm bilingual. I speak medicine and market it. And my job is to examine trends in health technology and innovation to see what's happening and how it's diffusing into a marketplace, most particularly AI and large language models.
Oh, super cool. And so you've come here from
New Jersey.
New Jersey.
Outside of New York. Yeah, long ride.
Very, very lucky to have you here. And I expect you'll be winning the selfie competition after your presence on the main stage today. So
lots of other speakers can do the same.
Yeah.
Mine was a little out of focus, so I get points off for quality.
But the sentiment was there. So I managed to catch most of your presentation this morning, so it was a great keynote to set the scene. And I think you touched on how we've evolved through the different eras of different revolutions. Talk to me more about what you've had.
Well, I think there's a few ways to look at it. In the simplest of terms, we're moving from analog to digital to cognitive. And most of us are kind of, I wouldn't say stuck, but entrenched in the digital era, digitization, right? That was the transformative step in so many aspects of technology. Like, let's say, the digitization of the camera to our smartphone. Yeah. But what's happening now is that large language models are engaging with us in a new way. It's not just a simple digital platform. It's not just zeros and ones. It's not just transactional like Google. It's iterative. There's a give and take, a back and forth. It's an interactive dynamic that's based upon cognition. And the interesting thing is, as new as it is, it's old as dirt. It's the Socratic dialogue. And that's the way we learn. That's the way we're taught. And now we're seeing these modalities come to life in large language models. So it's the way we think. I think we're really moving into the cognitive age, manifested by this new interface. And it's a game changer.
You mentioned that in the session today, and it did make me think, because I guess you could be forgiven for thinking that large language models is just a better bit of digital, I guess, but it's we're kind of taking that step change, and I think you presented that too. We've not had that interaction and engagement with technology before. But what does that then mean? What do we do with that kind of capability, and what impact can it have?
Well, there's 3 essential components to that, and we only talk about the 2. Faster and better. So we can write something faster, a discharge summary, some aspect of charting. We can probably do it better because the large language model can access the medical record. It can build in data and references. So faster and better. And that's at the heart of what goes on. But the interesting thing, it's faster and better, and you enjoy the process. It's kind of like Waze for cognition, right? It gets you somewhere faster, it gets you somewhere better, and you enjoy the ride. Well, look, in medicine, technology has not been about enjoying the ride. It's been an obstacle. It's been an encumbrance that clinicians say, rob me from patient care. So that's why I think this iterative dynamic and the nature of large language models and sort of the dynamics of that engagement are very interesting. Remember, we have a brain. The operating system of our brain, from a certain perspective, is language. We think. Imagine thinking without language. You have no perspective of time. Yeah. So by using language in the context of AI, it empowers you and it empowers the technology in new and profound ways.
Yeah. Look, I've appreciated the opportunity to kind of, get out of the trenches a little bit more and think a bit more about the bigger picture about, I guess, what impact these kinds of technologies have, because, a lot of CTOs and CIOs are talking about, well, we'll implement AI here, or we need to have an AI strategy and assess what tools and capability are available. But I guess what are the biggest problems you're seeing that are going to be solved? Because we always talk about it's going to reduce clinician burnout, or we could do things faster and better, as you said, or faster and the two faster and better. Yeah, what's faster and better. Yeah, and then enjoy the ride. So, but in healthcare, over the next kind of 6, 12, 24, where are you seeing the biggest impacts that some of these capabilities are going to have? Because as we've seen as well, as you pointed out, the trend on how quick these things are being implemented is just only getting faster and faster.
I think we're going to see something that is unexpected and is almost, I don't know if the word is reciprocal. What's going to happen is the brilliance of artificial intelligence, the analytical acumen of these models, particularly in the context of LLMs, will shine a light on the frailty of humanity. Now, everybody's talking about how great the computer will be. That's only half the issue here. What we're going to see is that diagnoses are usually pretty bad. Differential diagnosis, drug therapy, diagnosis in depression. We're going to have smart models that assimilate into care very, very simply and very, very readily. And we're going to find that we as human constructs are not so good. In America, it's been said that 250,000 people die a year from medical errors. I don't know if that number is true. I think it's overstated. But people do. Medical errors are a problem. Why? The human construct is an imperfect system. And AI, in its quote-unquote perfection, will shine a light on the imperfections of humanity. And that's going to kind of rock our world a little bit. We're going to have to say, well, look, when my wife comes home from the doctor's office, my first question is, what does the doctor say? Yeah. I may ask her a different question. I may say, what did the computer say? Yeah. But that's not a period at the end of that sentence. There's a comma. Because after that is, what did the doctor do? And it's the partnership working together that's going to raise the game.
You defused my next question a little bit there too, because I'm thinking about what are we kind of rapidly making ourselves obsolete here? I mean, you hear the conversations around AI of just because we can doesn't mean we should, and it is cool that we can create these technologies to get to a point that hey, they're doing cooler things, and there's a lot of financial backing and reason to create some cool tech. But then in healthcare, we've got humans looking after humans, and we've got that need for that bit. So where do you sit on that? That's a perspective.
That's a complicated cluster.
You're the kind of guy I need to ask.
You're buried. You kind of put it all together. Why do people climb mountains? Because they're there.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that there is a functional manifest destiny that is inherent to humanity, and that manifest destiny now is moving into the cognitive dynamic. Smarter, smarter, smarter. Now, here's the interesting thing. Innovation is a coin with two sides. On one side of the coin, it's an advancement. It's an innovation. The other side of the coin is obsolescence. So you remember the 38-inch flat-screen TVs? Oh, we all wanted one. It was the coolest thing in the world, right? $10,000, whatever it was. Today, people throw them away. They don't want them. They're too small. They're ridiculous, 38 inches. So...
or they're too big. You want everything on a phone.
Or they're too small. Interesting.
Yeah.
So innovation has with it obsolescence. And the obsolescence is acceptable. We throw away our phone for a new phone. Yeah. We might keep a car out of nostalgia, but in essence, right, obsolescence is part of the game. For the first time in history, human obsolescence itself, human cognition is on the obsolescence shopping block. And that speaks to the curious nature of your question.
Yeah, so I don't know how I feel about that, Joey.
And that's exactly the right answer.
Yeah.
The fact that you don't know how you feel makes it, cognitive ambiguity is the fodder for great thinking. But do we always have the guy who always has the answer?
Yeah.
We make fun of him. He's the kind of guy he always has the answer. I think ambiguity, pensive, introspective aspects of this is important. That's why I think we have to become technicians. I think we have to become philosophers. We have to become humanists and understand this as a very, very complex dynamic. And it's I don't think the answers will be easy, but the reality is that the toothpaste of technology is out of the tube, and it's not going to go back in.
Yeah. I feel like we could have a much longer conversation, but we can't in this format at least. But lastly, then, given that you're here in Australia, I'm not sure how long you're spending here or your history with it, but where do you think we sit on that kind of global innovation landscape here in the region? And potentially what should attendees here at HIC, the vendors, the hospital executives, the different stakeholders involved in healthcare be thinking about and prioritising in this global landscape?
I think that it comes down to the I word. And the I word in many instances is innovation. And that's something that we have to keep our eye on. We have to keep understanding the nature of innovation. But more importantly, I think that the other I word is implementation. And we have to really implement solutions that are practical and functional and make sense. So things like telemedicine, things like the digital stethoscope, these are practical realities available now. The portable EKG machine to take your EKG if you have, let's say, you're symptomatic or you have atrial fibrillation, is available. It's available on Amazon.
Yeah.
So, but most people don't know about it. So I think the I word here is not only innovation, it's not only implementation, but it's the I of you and me. We have to take control of that. We have to learn. And that's what this convention is about. It's learning new ideas, seeing where the future is going, looking at the trajectory. Because you look at AI today or large language models today, okay, it's interesting. Plot the trajectory. Look where they were a year ago and look where they are now. And that makes a line that is fascinating, concerning, and truly transformative.
Thanks, Peter. Delighted to be here today. My name's Annette Schmiede, and I'm in the role as CEO of the Digital Health Cooperative Research Centre.
You certainly are, and good friends of Talking HealthTech, and I've learned a lot in my time about the Digital Health CRC because I was well familiar with its existence, but then I had to go and Google what a CRC was, and then I had to try and work out where in the ecosystem it fit, and I've got a good understanding now, but I'd love to get your take because I'm sure there are others in the ecosystem that know of its existence, but not quite sure where it fits in the ecosystem.
That's a great question, and I'm delighted to answer it because, when I came into the role, I was aware of what a CRC was, but really getting under the hood, taking on that role, it's a really interesting program. It was established over 30 years ago by the Hawke government, actually, and it's one of the longest-running programs that the government supports. We sit in the Department of Industry, Science and Resources, so we're not in healthcare. Funding's coming from there. And it covers all parts of the economy. So it does mining, manufacturing, climate change, space. There's probably been about 400 of them since over that 30-year period, and at any one time there's about 25 on foot, and we're one of those. There's been a number in health, but not a huge number. And the two of the, what they call their success stories is ResMed and Cochlear. Yeah. So they both came out of this program. And what's really unique about this program, and I think it's where the magic is that it's bringing industry, academia and government together to basically accelerate research, implementation and translation, right? And it's not easy herding all of those. I mean, we have over 60 participants. We have 16 universities. We have a large number of industry partners, the largest being digital technology industry. So the largest is Telstra Health. We've got Alcidion, Harrison AI, Propel AI, Five Faces. So it goes the whole gamut of large through to smaller. I won't say startups. They're a bit more than startups, but they're maturing startups.
Yes.
So that's the tech industry. And we have every state health department, bar Tasmania. We have the Commonwealth Department of Health as a project partner, and we have a large number of public, local health districts, HSSs, public-private, rural, remote. We have a number of PHNs, industry associations, quite a really extensive list of everybody that what I would call makes up the healthcare ecosystem and the digital health ecosystem.
Yeah, and when the Digital Health CRC was established, or going along that pathway, because it's such a tricky challenge in terms of bringing those different stakeholders together, it's a really important one. But I from the outside wasn't noticing a great deal of kind of that impact, or you don't see the Digital Health CRC in the really early days of its existence the past, from my observation, 6, 12, 24, the last couple of years in particular, we've really seen fingers in many pies or involved and are kind of at that forefront. Like, what's I'd love to learn from you about, like, from your side, like, seeing that where you've come in that space, like coming into that environment and then to where we are now, what that's been like.
Look, it's been a bit thrilling, actually. This is my first CEO role, which is really weird, the tail end of my career.
Doing well. I wouldn't have thought. There you go. So.
But I've done a lot of other things.
Yes,
I've had a lot of positions. I've chaired a lot of boards, so I've had a lot of CEOs reporting to me. So I know what a good CEO does and what a not good CEO does. Hopefully I'm in the first category. But yes, I mean, the CRC model, I guess, is unusual and it's time limited. So the funding is put in by the participants. So in this case, for our CRC, the universities and industry put in $55 million. The Department of Industry matches that. So that's $110 million worth of funding we've got. And the funding gets allocated. A lot of it gets allocated to the research budget, right? Because that's the big driver of us. But we also have a big education and capacity building program. So you've worked lots with Dr. Mel.
Yes.
We have 50 PhD students graduating next year. We have 40 high degree students, lots of interns, building capacity, and then there's a commercialisation to the program. So bringing that all together and starting almost from scratch, which is what the CRC's, the model is. You have to, employ people, you have to get everybody on board, you have to develop a research plan. There's a lot of work in those early years that goes into, I guess, establishing strong foundations. And I think with this digital health CRC, we got caught with COVID, right? You can't do much health and medical research in the middle of a pandemic. That said, we did, but it wasn't, in requiring, that actual involvement with the healthcare sector because they were so, I guess, distracted with dealing with a pandemic. So there was a little bit of a hiatus. So when I came in, we had a little bit of catch-up to do. So we hadn't allocated quite the budget for the research. I also identified the role that the CRC has in growing the industry sector in which it's involved. So this is another unique element of that model. And I really kind of got drawn to that because I thought, we have a big issue in Australia with falling productivity, and we're sitting really right down the bottom of the productivity in the innovation league tables, right? So a lot of government talk, a lot of investment now going into, I guess, building the economy, complex manufacturing, all of that sort of thing. So, we hear a lot about the promise of digital health technology and how Australia could be a leader in this space, but, getting that support for industry, the private sector, it's hard. There's bringing academia and industry together, the research community and industry takes a little bit of, I guess, fine-tuning and nurturing. There's a bit of hesitation. The procurement rules make it difficult for also industry to engage with the public system. So we are able to bring all those parties together in a safe space, right? And that's when the magic happens, right? Some great examples. We've got a project going in Melbourne with Peter Mac and Propel AI, which was a spin-out of Max Kelsen.
Cool.
And the senior clinicians at Peter Mac say this would never have happened. The work that's now going on in bringing disparate data sets together across all the cancer use cases and now being looked at through AI. What are some of the learnings that are coming out of diagnostics, treatment, models of care? That would never have happened if industry and the hospital hadn't been able to work together very closely.
That's an amazing example. That's I'm looking forward to diving into that a little bit more.
Well, we should do another session. Some of our projects. That's what we should talk to you about. Bring some of our projects. Fantastic flagship project in aged care, which is going to, it was called out at the Royal Commission into aged care as the only research project they called out as an exemplar of what should be happening in the aged care sector. Len Gray's your neighbour down there, so you could talk to Len about that.
We can pop by later. But we're going to have to wrap this conversation in a sec. But given that trajectory then and some of these great use cases, and we're in the most exciting industry in town at the moment, so a lot happening and that engagement from those different partners too. What's going to be keeping you busy, Annette, over the next kind of period that you
So we
talked
finish
about.
in 2026. We've got December
Yeah.
2026 is our finish date. So that's just a little over 2 and a bit years, yeah.
Wow, yeah.
Nothing like a bit of a tailwind.
Yeah. so between now and then, what can we look forward to seeing?
Look, I think we can look forward to, we're moving into what we call our translation and commercialisation phase, because one of the other, roles that the CRC has is to look for the opportunities out of commercialisation, right? Once again, to support the local industry. So, this is once again a complex area because you've got issues around IP and, the roadway or the roadmap to commercialisation is long and winding. And, companies can take them 10, 20 years to really hit their stride. Then you have great examples like Harrison AI who have taken off remarkably. So we've got work to do now coming out of some of our flagship projects. Aged care is one of them. The one I just talked about with Peter Mack. What's the commercial opportunity here now for Propel AI to take some of this technology that they've developed to a wider audience? Yes. So we'll be concentrating on that. But from a bigger picture point of view, I think what we want to do is really be supporting the federal government, the Department of Health in Canberra, to provide the evidence base for some of the policy that they're looking at developing and have developed, and encourage them to, I guess, take some bold steps in legislating some of the things that we know we need to legislate, interoperability being one of them, minimum standards, a whole range of things that are on the runway, but we just need to get them, into flight.
Yeah.
So I'm Simon Cleverley. I'm the Assistant Secretary for the Digital Health Branch in the Australian Government Department of Health and Aged Care. And that's quite a mouthful.
Thank you, Simon, for coming through here at HIC. And I'm looking forward to having a chat because there's it's the right time to have a conversation because there's a lot of things going on. But tell me, what brings you to HIC and what are you looking forward to?
Look, I think for a long time, everyone's seen the department as a bit of a sit out there and watch everything from the outside, but obviously with the need for us to have a really consolidated health reform agenda, connecting all the parts of the funding reform side of things with the systems reform that we need to do that in lockstep. To be able to do that, we actually have to be a part of the community, and there's obviously a whole range of domains that we'll probably touch on that sort of goes into that. But really it's about making sure that we are out listening, being a part of, and making sure that the reform agenda and the policies we're putting forward are informed.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I mean, there's a buzz generally within the ecosystem, and we've talked for a long time about what needs to happen. But I genuinely believe stuff is happening from ground up, but also top down. But for those that are kind of trying to navigate the landscape too, I mean, we've got Spark, we've got CSIRO, and we've got stuff happening through the Australian Digital Health Agency, and of course the department. Who's responsible for what? Who's in what lane, and what do we go to for the department versus all the other kind of area?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a really good question because it is a very complex environment, and you didn't even touch on the states and territories.
Of course, states and territories, yeah.
And for the first time, the Australian government released a digital health blueprint in 2023, late 2023. It's the first time we've had a strategy at the Commonwealth level, the Australian government level, which is really sort of to auspice the significant investments that the Australian government is investing in systems reform. But that also helps to clarify the fact that whilst the Australian government really has a role in setting the policy direction and being really clear on where it wants to make reforms and the sequence of those reforms, we can't do it alone. And really, it's also about how we work together with states and territories, how we work with all the delivery partners. You touched on the agency, Health Direct, the CSIRO, and the list goes on. But it's also being really clear and signal and provide those guardrails around where we want our innovators, the people that are actually really, really solid about being creative, just solving the really complex problems, which is why we're all here at HIC. And to make sure that marketplace also has the right signals to be able to invest in the right way and that we all innovate in the right direction. That it's not just unfettered innovation, that we all have clear guardrails on where we're all going together.
Yeah, love it. And so that's what we need. And you touched on it already that we've got the blueprint and some of these kind of indications that there in terms of what these guardrails look like and where the priorities are. But help me understand a little bit more about where these things are heading.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, a really practical example is We've been talking a lot about sharing by default. A lot of people are asking us, well, what does that actually mean? Obviously, we have Australia's My Health Record system. It's an important part of the landscape. It's not the only part of the landscape, but it's really important that we make sure that we start to really change the way that we think about information flowing around the system. My Health Record is going to be a really, really critical part of that. And we're starting with the pathology and the diagnostic imaging sector, where we're going to start to require that if a report is generated, that it is uploaded for the benefit of the patient, but also for the patient's care team. We've seen some tremendous growth in the last 12 months since that policy was announced. I think we've seen somewhere in the order of about 33% growth in the number of diagnostic reports going into My Health Record, and about 20% increase from a higher base of pathology reports going into My Health Record, somewhere in the order of about 10 million reports a month going up, and the reviews are going through the roof. So that is, the data's being used because the information's there. So that's the first one. The second one really is about healthcare identifiers. Just in Medicare system alone, when we started this agenda, we had about 87 different identifiers just in the Medicare administration system. We're in the tent too. We have the same problems. We've actually got to solve that and make sure that we can move forward with a clear pathway towards a single national healthcare identifier, working really closely with states and territories, with our delivery partners to make sure that we can do that. That's going to require legislative reform as well. But again, we've got to get the insights about the use cases where we really need to use those things. For example, at the moment we have issues with the National Health Service Directory that can't consume those identifiers. So we've got to do a lot of work together to make sure that we can unstick that. And third and finally, I think really importantly, the Sparked agenda. What's been so important about that is it has given us a mechanism to really build a community. And the whole process about building community is then about getting consensus around how we actually do the reforms. And then obviously the regulatory reform piece that then sort of comes in to back those in. It can be made really clear to people that are participating in the ecosystem, not only to be a part of the evolution or the revolution, but then also knowing going down the track that it is going to be a level playing field, because the expectations on the way that we go out moving information around the system will be consistent.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, look, I think no one's going to argue with or disagree that we need all the different stakeholders involved to be able to collaborate and create solutions that'll be meaningful and aligned. But I think that examples, even what I've seen today and HIC, that there is truly like representation from everyone, like all the different stakeholders in some of these conversations, and whether be in the sessions or in breakfast or whatever, where you can have a really specific example shared by a psychologist who's had a particular challenge, and it's like, well, when I do this in this particular thing, and so when you're coming from another side, it can take something, a concept that can be quite theoretical or nebulous, and be like, okay, well, if we could do that, and then it starts to give context and fill the color into why we're actually trying to and what we're trying to do. And I feel like we're getting each time, and Spark has been a great, in my opinion, that Spark has been a great example of the real hands-on. We're very much at a rolling the sleeves up stage, and it's great to see that involvement in every direction. So are you feeling that kind of step change in terms of different parts of the ecosystem actually coming together to do some of this stuff?
Absolutely. And I think we've now got, as of today, every single state and territory signed up to be founding members of that program. That is a remarkable thing to have done since the launch of that program was only in the 23rd of August last year. So in less than a year, we have published the first, core data for interoperability standard out of that environment. And that has been because we've actually had everybody participating in the process. I think I saw the last statistic was we've got about 20 aged care vendors now participating in that environment. So it's not just the standard, 10 vendors that always lead the intern work really hard. It's everybody, and they realise that this is going to be the mechanism that actually helps them move to that new world of how do we move health information in real time around the system in a consistent way to really overcome the problems that you've talked about, which is just because you are a provider working in a hospital here today, you might be someone working in a GP practice tomorrow, and we actually need to make sure that the information follows the patient. And at the moment, the way that information is stored in silos is really around the medical models of how we deliver healthcare. And so we're really sort of trying to flip that with programs like Spark. Think about how do we make sure the data can follow the patient around the health system and give the insights not only to the patient and their carers, but also to the providers, and then really create that feedback loop so that we have a learning health system going forward.
And lastly, Simon, I mean, with done a good job in terms of outlining where we've got to so far and where some of the priorities are. But in terms of next steps from here, following HIC, what we can see over the next 6, 12, 24, where are your priorities really at to hone in on, and what might we say?
Well, we're doing a lot of work around not just the pipes part of it, not just the technology, but it's also about all the human factors of interoperability. So, we set up some new national governance. For the first time, we have a digital health oversight committee that reports to the health chief executives in this country, and that committee reports direct to health ministers. So we have that committee now that's making the big decisions around investing in things like the Health Information Exchange for Australia that's just been announced by the Digital Health Agency. So that's going to be a really big priority for us and all the states and territories to get that architecture right. But we're also really working hard through the legislative suite of things. I touched on some of those today. And then over the next really 12 months, it's going to be actually how do we use all these foundation capabilities to actually deliver demonstrable change into the system. So, for example, we are looking at building a patient summary now. There was some additional funding provided in the most recent budget to build out the patient summary. That's really going to be the ability to start thinking about how does that information port to follow the patient around the system. The second one's going to be really around chronic disease, chronic conditions and the management of chronic conditions, and how do we make sure that if we're going to do things like, different funding models, that it's not just GPs and allied health providers need the data as well. How do we make sure the whole care team has the information? So using technology and capabilities to make sure that we can have that view in the whole of the patient's care team. And then the third one is really starting to talk about how do we start to get much richer information at the point of care around things like why is it that people are actually going to the doctor, that reason for health encounter, and less reliance on our administrative systems to be able to do the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
I am Anja Nikolic. I'm the CEO of the Australasian Institute of Digital Health.
Thank you so much, Anja, for being here, and I'm very lucky to be able to pull you away from such a big couple of days here at HIC, obviously hosted by the AIDH, and what a way to kick us off into this next chapter of digital health, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, really delighted to be here. It's more than a couple of days. It's 3 plus 1 or 2 add-ons.
Yeah, of course.
So it's a huge juggernaut for us. A unique opportunity to bring together a pretty diverse, dynamic, important community in the Australian healthcare landscape. So it's my first one.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely delighted to be here and great to be talking to you.
And so for those that don't know too, you've been in the role for a bit now of CEO. So coming into the role, I'd love to learn a little bit more about, what you bring to your background and the context and such an interesting community to then be part of and kind of where we take it from here.
Yeah, sure. It's an interesting question because a lot of people assume that I come from the digital health landscape, and I don't. What I bring is quite extensive experience working in institutes, associations, membership organisations and peak bodies in the Australian landscape, and the last of which was in healthcare. It was the Australian Physiotherapy Association. So what I bring is an understanding of what communities like this want, what it takes to progress certain agendas in policy and advocacy, what it takes to move the kind of macro landscape in the right direction, what people want out of membership, out of their community, out of connection with an organisation like ours. People ask me, so, how does someone who doesn't come from digital health take on a role of CEO in a digital health organisation? And I say to them, well, the ecosystem is so rich with people with that expertise on our board, in our engaged communities, in our branches, that my access to that expertise and the organisation's access to that expertise is never lacking. What we need now, I think, in order to take the AIDH to that to the next level is that expertise around peak body management and, how to create policy, how to advocate to government, how to market what's available in this landscape, how to provide education opportunities that matter and that are relevant to the needs of the community that we're servicing. So that's where I come from. Having worked at the APA, the Australian Physiotherapy Association, one of the largest allied health disciplines in Australia, I'm acutely aware of where allied health is in the digital health transformative sort of landscape, if you like, and how wanting it is and how much it matters, and yet how much certain professions grapple with what to do next and how to overcome the setbacks and overcome the barriers that stand in place. So I do have experience and perspective around, how that works in those communities, healthcare communities that are perhaps peripheral in some way to date. So I hope I can bring a unique set of skills and experiences to the organisation and the role, and I'm certainly zhuzhed about it.
Amazing, that's the right term to use. The as the digital health ecosystems evolved, I think naturally there'll always be buckets of people that have like-minded things that they want to share together, or that need to band to do things at greater scale. And I think in this ecosystem, we're not short of industry bodies or groups or communities, big and small. And like you even suggested, in healthcare more broadly, every discipline will have their own kind of subset of things going on. So for those that kind of working out where to put the AIDH in that kind of mental jigsaw puzzle of, the role it plays. We've got government, we've got things that are funded by government, we've got not-for-profits, we've got everything going on. AIDH is kind of pervasive across a lot of it, but like what role does it play within all those different moving parts?
I think you got it in one. What I'd like it to play, and what I think it really is uniquely positioned to do, is to be smack in the middle, because it does bring together diverse groups of people. We talk to decision makers and governments, we talk to industry, we talk to technology, we talk to clinicians, and we are that independent voice that provides unfiltered, authoritative advice and direction, or has the potential to do more of that. And that is really where in this diverse and varied ecosystem we fit. And what I'd like to do in the months and years to come is provide absolute evidence that that is the case and that it is where we belong. And, when I look around HIC, it confirms for me that that is indeed what the role of the AIDH is. When you have a look at the cross-section of people who are here, the backgrounds they come with, the unique perspectives they come with, you ask, where is that place? It's in the middle.
Amazing. I would say here at HIC, and we're at the tail end of a lot of the different activities and different streams, as you touched on too. What's your wrap? What's your kind of take, other than needing to hide under a table and have a few deep breaths for a moment? But maybe that's how I deal with events. I'm not sure how you deal with it. But what's your kind of take as we start to round out these sessions?
I'm so optimistic about what the future holds. There's so much at stake and there's so much happening, and there are some innovations that are coming towards us that are really worthy of enthusiasm and worthy of leaning into. And I think about things like the health information exchange. I think about the potential of AI in healthcare. I think about the various vendors that are here in this sponsorship and exhibition space who are offering unique and weird and wonderful things that help clinicians and the healthcare workforce in general do what they need to do. And I can't help but think, geez, there's a lot to get enthusiastic about. The devil will be in the implementation, and it will be in the execution, and it will be in the human factor, I think. So there's a lot of work to be done. I close off HIC, or will in a few hours, feeling quite exhausted, but also really enthused about what's coming ahead.
No, I agree. The party doesn't stop, I guess. There's HIC, but the AIDH, where there's we've got the state committees, active member here, and also other kind of education opportunities. And you touched on some things to come too. What can we look forward to seeing from AIDH over the coming months of this?
Great question. I think we've been a little dormant in advocacy and thought leadership, so I think you can look forward to a lot of output. Not thought leadership that's lofty and kind of too conceptual, but some really practical guidance and advice on where to next in a number of different areas. I'm thinking specifically, quite soon we need to start providing some advice and thought leadership around the legislative landscape, the assurance frameworks that exist to help digital transformation, etc. So look forward to output in that area. I also think there's a lot we can do in education, not necessarily very formal education, although there's a place for that and we're dabbling and kind of exploring what that might look like. But in the short-term future, vocational skill-based learning for the clinician who's not a digital health person, who kind of looks at this space quite reluctantly, knows that they need to dabble in it, but doesn't know where to start. And so we're really thinking about how to bring that community alongside professionalisation of Chia, perhaps a clinical informatics fellowship that is rooted in education and learning, So that whole space around supporting the workforce to upskill in whatever way makes sense to them, whether it's short, sharp learning or really formal, structured learning, look forward to seeing some movement in that area. And then the third pillar would be around community engagement. I think we do a really good job of engaging the engaged community, the digital health community, the people who kind of, wear that on their heart and sleeve. And what we perhaps don't do so well is to talk to the rest of the healthcare workforce, the clinicians, the workers who would not necessarily come to HIC and would not necessarily think of the AIDH as their natural home, but for whom we can provide services and information and resources to help them, undertake that transformation.
Yeah.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Talking Health Tech. Make sure you like and subscribe and share this episode with someone who might find it valuable. For more information and resources about healthcare innovation, visit talkinghealthtech.com.